sliding a crisp bill across the table. This is the new line. Nobody scrutinizes a 20. You can pass these at a taco stand, a gas station, a drive-thru. It's pure profit. Mayo's heart sank. A high-quality counterfeit 20 was a nightmare. If the printer moved to mass-producing 20s, they would never be able to stop the bleeding. A few days later, Mayo followed Stroud to a Popeye's chicken. He watched Stroud pull into the drive-thru. Acting on a hunch, Mayo jumped out of his car and ran into the restaurant. He flashed his badge at the manager. "Give me the bill that man just handed you." The manager handed over a $20 bill. Mayo felt it. It was slightly greasy. He held it up to the light. H2 and H38. "Give him his change," Mayo ordered. "Let him go." They had Stroud, but they didn't have the lab. They executed a sneak and peek warrant on Stroud's home entering while he was out to search without leaving a trace. They found no printers. Stroud was a broker, but he wasn't the alchemist. Then, the breakthrough. Stroud headed to Lawndale. Mayo followed him to a neat townhouse. He watched a man come out to meet Stroud. Middle-aged, well-groomed. Mayo checked the registration. One name came back: Albert Talton. Chapter 7, Trash and Rewards. It's public domain, Mayo reminded his team at 3:00 a.m. For the next several weeks, the Secret Service became the most overqualified garbage collectors in California. They would wait for Talton to put his trash on the curb, then whisk it away. The bags were a treasure trove. They found scraps of newsprint with Benjamin Franklin's eyes. They found hundreds of empty ink cartridges. But the most damning evidence was a receipt from Staples. He used his rewards card. Toledo laughed. He was so confident he was racking up points on the ink he used to print the money. The records showed Talton was buying thousands of dollars of ink every month. They moved their surveillance to a hotel directly across from his townhouse. They watched him through high-powered lenses. They saw Paul McCory arrive in his orange Mercedes. They saw David Goldberg carrying a red backpack heavy with paper. On April 30th, 2008, they watched Albert and McCory drive to Paper Mart. Mayo followed them inside. He saw Albert loading heavy bales of newsprint into the back of his car. "That's enough paper for $2 million, Mayo whispered into his radio. "He's gearing up for the biggest run of his life." Mayo wanted the whole organization. He waited until May 8th, when they knew all the key players were inside. Chapter 8, The Fall of the Mint. The morning of May 8th was crisp and sunny. In Lawndale, the suburban silence was suddenly shattered by the roar of engines and the crash of a battering ram. "Secret Service, get down!" The agents swarmed the townhouse. Albert Talton was in the hallway, caught between the kitchen and the bedroom. He saw Matthew Mayo, a man he had never seen before, but whose eyes told him the game was over. Albert didn't run. He slowly lowered himself to the carpet, his hands held high. The house was a factory. In the garage, sheets of bills were hanging on lines like laundry, the air thick with the scent of Aquanet. In the lab, 5 high-end printers were churning away. "You move the mouse," Mayo said, standing at the computer, "and there's Ben Franklin. He's been waiting for us, hasn't he, Albert?" Agents recovered $162,000 in finished notes and nearly $1.4 million in partials. It was the largest digital counterfeiting bust in the history of the Secret Service. In the interrogation room, Albert was strangely at peace. "I just looked at the bill and saw a puzzle. Agent Mayo, I solved it. You stole from every person who works a real job, Albert." Albert looked him in the eye, his cockiness still flickering. "I was just chasing the dream, Matt. I just found a better way to print the admission ticket." Chapter 9: The Specter of Justice. The courtroom in the U.S. Federal Courthouse in Los Angeles was a sanctuary of wood paneling and heavy silence, a stark contrast to the buzzing printers of Lawndale. Assistant U.S. Attorney Mac Jenkins stood before the bench, his eyes fixed on the man in the center of the storm. Albert Talton sat at the defense table, his hands folded. He wasn't the image of a broken man. Even in his prison-issue jumpsuit, there was a residual air of the engineer, the man who knew how things fit together. "Your Honor," Jenkins began, his voice echoing through the chamber. "The defendant didn't just manufacture counterfeit currency. He manufactured an economic contagion. He turned ordinary consumer technology into a weapon against the very foundation of our financial system. $7.2 million. That is not a hobby. That is a factory of lies." As the evidence was presented, the Aquanet cans, the bales of newsprint, the Staples reward card records, the gallery watched in a mixture of awe and disgust. Goldberg, having already confessed, sat in the witness stand, his voice barely a whisper. "I just did what he told me," Goldberg said, avoiding Albert's gaze. "He was the one who figured out the hairspray. He was the one who cleaned up the scans. I glued the sheets together." Albert didn't flinch. When it was his turn to speak, he didn't offer a tearful apology. He spoke of the process. He spoke of the challenge. "I saw something that could be improved," Albert told the court, his tone analytical, almost proud. "The bills the government makes, they are just a puzzle. I solved that puzzle. I didn't think about the victims. I thought about the math." The judge, a man who had seen decades of greed pass through his court, leaned forward. "Mr. Talton, your intellect is not in question. Your character is. You chose to use your gifts to hollow out the pockets of people who couldn't afford a $100 loss. You treated the American economy as your private laboratory. The sentence was 9 years. For a financial crime, it was a hammer blow." As the bailiffs led him away, Albert caught a glimpse of Allison Sewell in the back row. Her face was a mask of grief and confusion. The Woodland Hills house was already under foreclosure. They